Hello, I'm Esther Githu-Yuat. It's Thursday, June 9th. This is Africa 54.
Belgium's King Philippe expresses his deepest regrets for his nation's abuses in its former colony, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Nigeria's ruling party picks former Lagos State Governor Bola Tinubu as its 2023 presidential candidate. And the U.S. House passes a wide-ranging gun control bill in response to recent mass shootings. But it has almost no chance of becoming law. We'll explain.
Belgium's King Philippe is expressing his deepest regrets for his nation's abuses in its former colony, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Clara Frank has more.
During a speech on his first official trip to the country, King Philippe said that Belgian colonial rule had been unjustifiable and racist. His speech came 2 years after he made similar comments on the 60th anniversary of Congo's independence. He then went further than any of his predecessors in condemning the acts of violence and cruelty during Belgian colonial rule, but he did not issue a full apology.
Il a donné lieu à des exactions.
The colonial regime caused abuse and humiliation. On the occasion of my first trip to the Congo, right here, in front of the Congolese people, and those who today are still suffering, I wish to reaffirm my deepest regrets for these past wounds.
Belgium has faced a reckoning over its colonial past in recent years, particularly around the commemoration of Congo's 60th anniversary of independence in 2020. President Félix Tshisekedi enthusiastically welcomed the king's visit.
Since he took power in 2019, the two countries have renewed the cooperation, including the resumption of the activities of the Center for Development and Cooperation, not forgetting the restitution to the Democratic Republic of the Congo of its cultural objects abusively obtained during the colonial period, as well as very soon the relics remains of the first Prime Minister, Mr. Patrice Emery Lumumba, a national hero.
King Philippe returned a traditional mask, which he says was a symbolic gesture. The initiation mask of the Suku people has been held for decades at Belgium's Royal Museum for Central Africa. It was offered to Congo's National Museum in Kinshasa in what the monarch called an indefinite loan. While some Congolese are disappointed that the king did not offer a full apology, others hope it will bring investment and a renewed focus on conflict in the east of the country. Clara Frank, VOA News.
Somalia's new president, Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, was inaugurated as the 10th president of Somalia Thursday in a ceremony attended by over 1,000 people, including presidents, prime ministers, and more than 100 diplomats. In a speech punctuated by cheers and clapping, Mohammed, 66, also promised to tackle widespread insecurity, corruption, poverty, reform of justice, economic development, and most importantly, the humanitarian crisis the country is currently facing. To assist in the fight against insurgents, U.S. President Joe Biden in May signed an order authorizing the deployment of U.S. Special Operation Forces inside Somalia. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, and Djibouti President Omar Ismail Guelleh were among the dignitaries attending the inauguration. Now, for more on President Mohammed's inauguration, I'm joined by VOA Somali senior editor Mohamed Olad. Mohammed, welcome back again to Africa 54.
Thank you so much, Esther.
You know what's very notable and very interesting is how many presidents, how many regional leaders were there, diplomats. What is so special and what do you make of this attendance during today's inauguration?
Well, apart from the being inauguration for Somali president, today's inauguration was something that signifies the importance of Somalia strategically and where it lies in the region, because a lot of rivalries appear. Ethiopia, Egypt, who are fighting over Nile, were there. United Arab Emirates, Qatar were there. United Arab Emirates considers now its close ally to President Mohammed, and before it was against the former President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo. Kenya, which lost maritime case against Somalia, his president was there. So a lot of rivalries were there. So and all of them were pledging support for the Somali president and the government. So it showed that a lot of people there, even Ismail Omar Gele, the president of Djibouti, who had no good relationship with the former president, was also there. And all of them had one pledge and vision, and they said they will support Somalia in the fight against Al-Shabaab, drought, and all things coming up ahead of the President Hassan.
You mentioned the drought, you mentioned the famine. Actually, there's a crisis there, and this is coming on the heels of, the pandemic. Almost every other country is reeling from that. What is he promising to do to be able to tackle these challenges?
Well, first he implored the international community to help save lives of Somali innocent people who are on the verge of starvation, famine. And apart from that, he said that his government is planning two things. The first thing he said is an urgent, and he will ask the international community and international partners to help Somalia avert the upcoming famine. And the other thing he said, his government is establishing an agency that will deal with the future drought situations. He says the drought in Somalia has been repeating due to climate change, due to other human-made disasters like deforestation, the cutting trees and doing bad things on the environment. So he says environmental agents will be established, and urgently he will seek help from the international community to save lives in Somalia and avert famine.
This is his second time as president. It's not a successive term. He was there in 2012 to 2017. What is he promising to do differently this time round for the people of Somalia?
Well, that question was asked even by this VOA when he took the office 2 weeks ago. President Hassan said he learned from his past. He has been watching 5 years over while he was not president, and he has been facing challenges while he was president for another nearly 5 years. So he says due to these experiences, he will not repeat his mistakes, and he's the only person in Somalia who got chance to be re-elected for 2 times since the collapse of President Mohammed in 1991. So he says due to that experience of being a president, and again being an opposition leader, and then coming back to the presidency, right, will help him learn from his mistakes, and he says he will not repeat the mistakes he has done.
Mohammed, thank you very much, as always, for your insight.
Thank you so much.
Mohamed Olad is VOA Somali senior editor. In Nigeria's northeast Borno state, militia sources say jihadists have killed at least 23 men in the latest violence to hit the conflict region. Fighters from the Islamic State West Africa province seized the men on Tuesday as they searched for scrap metal in the Magdala village in the Dikwa district. The incident is just coming to light Thursday because telecom towers destroyed by jihadists have slowed communication in the area. Nigeria's ruling All Progressives Congress has chosen former Lagos State Governor Bola Tinubu as its candidate for presidential elections in 2023. David Doyle has the details.
Nigeria's ruling party has picked former Lagos State Governor and powerful political power broker Bola Tinubu as its presidential candidate for the 2023 elections. Incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari is stepping down next year after leading Africa's most populous country and top oil exporter for the maximum 8 years allowed by the Constitution. But he did not name a preferred successor, leaving the field for the All Progressives Congress candidacy wide open. Tinubu, who was in charge of Nigeria's commercial capital from 1999 to 2007, defeated 13 other candidates, including Buhari's deputy, Yemi Osinbajo. His supporters portray him as an effective administrator, with a knack for picking bright, committed technocrats to get jobs done. But his critics denounce him as a godfather figure who doles out lucrative contracts and plum jobs to his friends. They say he's not above sending out street thugs to intimidate opponents if he fails to get his way. It's a characterization he denies.
Those who did not support me, you have nothing to fear. I hold no grudges and grievances.
Tinubu's main opponent will be Atiku Abubakar, who was vice president from 1999 to 2007 under former president Olusegun Obasanjo. He represents the People's Democratic Party, and among other pledges, he's promised to end insecurity in the country and revive its fragile economy.
Reuters filed that report. Nigeria has quietly lost almost 10% of its tree cover over the past 2 decades, leaving those who depend on it for their livelihoods fearing for their future. Nyanchon Wari reports.
Armed with an axe, Egbontoluwa Marigi heads into the bush of Nigeria's southwestern Ondo state. He's looking for trees to cut down. Like many in Africa's most populous country, he relies on the forest to support his family. But Nigeria is losing trees at an alarming rate, and the 61-year-old fears for his way of life.
I'm sure that very soon there'll be no more trees in the forest. In the next 10, 15, or 20 years, all the trees will be gone.
The logs Marigi and others fell are fastened together to make rafts. Tugboats drag them through the waters for the 1-week trip to a sawmill in Lagos. Marigi felled almost 30 trees last year. That's a drop in the ocean. 240,000 acres of forest were lost in 2021, says Global Forest Watch. That's equivalent to 59.5 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions. According to Dr. Muhtari Aminu Kanu, Director General of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, 300,000 soccer fields of trees vanish every year.
We have to plant 300 million trees per year in order to stand still. And we have been cutting this number of trees for so many years. So this will give you an idea of the enormity of the tasks that is ahead.
Many factors contribute, chief among them illegal logging, land clearance for farming, and the cutting of trees for firewood. President Muhammadu Buhari pledged to plant 25 million trees a year at a UN climate summit in 2019. But conservationists and officials like Femi Obadun, Director of Forest Management for Ondo State, say more needs to be done.
Once the last tree falls or fails, the last man dies. There's no gainsaying about it. It's not an exaggeration because we all live on plants. We live on the forest.
That's certainly true for Marigi.
I eat and I drink from this forest. I fish and I sell. I cut trees from it and sell. I hunt in it.
He says the forest has kept him on the right path and preserved his character. But he fears Nigeria's pace of deforestation means there won't be any trees left for his children.
Nyanchon Wari of Reuters filed that report. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, Kenyan companies that unload freight, ships and transport cargo faced growing competition from international shippers. Now workers' unions say unless steps are taken to protect local businesses, an estimated 1,000 firms and 10,000 jobs may be lost. Juma Majanga reports from Mombasa.
Peter Otieno, a clearing and forwarding agent at the Port of Mombasa, says his business is still recovering from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, he is worried about competing with international shipping lines, which have started offering full services previously done by Kenyan businesses.
When we have left the business open, such that the shipping lines can come here, open their offices, then after opening the offices, they do even clearing, they do the transport.
Kenya has no commercial shipping vessels. According to the Shippers Council of Eastern Africa, foreign-owned shipping lines control up to 92% of Kenya's international freight trade. The law previously restricted global shipping lines from providing added services, leaving more business to local companies. But since winning a Kenyan court case in 2017, these shipping lines have consolidated cargo unloading, forwarding, and other services in what is called a vertical integration model. Workers' unions argue international shippers have an advantage because they make initial contact with the clients and can offer them full services first, costing local jobs and business.
In the last 1 year, here in Mombasa, we have lost almost 50 members who are operating companies, now not operating.
The World Trade Organization Safeguard Framework allows member countries to develop regulations to protect local companies from unfair competition. In this case, local businesses say they are being hurt by uncompetitive practices. The Shippers Council of Eastern Africa backs the vertical integration model, saying it streamlines operations, improves efficiency, and is a global model that is here to stay. But the council adds it understands the workers' concerns and is calling on Kenya to adopt regulations to address job losses.
So what we need is to have regulations that are actually able to control how this happens. That even when it happens, our interests as a region, as a Kenya, as a corridor, as locals are taken care of.
But freight companies at the port of Mombasa, already struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID pandemic, fear they will be pushed out of business.
We need to defend the clearing and forwarding companies that are operating in this country, which is the investment of the local Kenyans.
Industry insiders in Kenya say without measures to protect them, local companies may be dealt a fatal blow. Juma Majanga, OVA News, Port of Mombasa, Kenya.
We'd like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. On Friday's entertainment report, Heather Maxwell talks to African music legend Koffi Olomide. Still to come, the U.S. House passes a wide-ranging gun control bill in response to recent mass shootings, but it has almost no chance of becoming law. We'll tell you why.
A new flag, a new country, a new sense of hope. Millions of South Sudanese around the world celebrated Independence Day. Finally, peace after 21 years of conflict that had killed and displaced millions. 11 years later, ongoing conflict and fulfilled peace agreements as the country's leaders fight for power. Hopes of peace dashed, along with expectations of better education, health care, and standard of living.
South Sudan, there was no state to begin with, so what we should be talking about in South Sudan is a state formation, not a state collapse.
South Sudan now grapples with questions of what happens now. On Tuesday, June 14, tune in to a 1-hour special virtual panel discussion on the way forward for South Sudan.
In the village of Manhene, on the border between Mozambique and Zimbabwe, women are raising awareness for their community policing project to reduce gender-based violence. The Lamuska Association welcomes villagers who are victims of violence and tries to change mentalities in a rural region where Ometa remains the norm when it comes to violence in the home. The project is part of an effort by the community to change things using a mix of verbal dissuasion and awareness programs backed by the power of the law. Since 2011, a civilian policing unit made up entirely of women, originally devised to search female suspects and, if necessary, arrest them, has retrained its empowered to arrest offenders in violence against women and detain them while awaiting police.
Before, there was a lot of resistance from men who committed domestic violence against women and children. But after 12 years of mediation, building awareness among families, the violence decreased. In the early years, there were many cases of violence, but now we only have about one case a month. Before starting to work with Lemusika, here, women did not see violence as oppression. They saw this violence as part of a culture that when someone gets married, any harm done to them is seen as normal.
With local authorities poorly trained to settle gender-based violence, 3/4 of Mozambicans resort to community courts to resolve conflicts, according to UNICEF. Lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives passed a wide-ranging gun control bill Wednesday night in response to recent mass shootings across the United States. But it has almost no chance of becoming law as a group of Senate Democrats and Republicans pursue negotiations focused on improving mental health programs, bolstering school security, and enhancing background checks. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more.
2 weeks after 19 children and 2 teachers were killed in a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, U.S. lawmakers heard from parents of the victims.
I left my daughter at that school, and that decision will haunt me for the rest of my life.
And from a survivor inside the school.
He shot my friend that was next to me, and I thought he was going to come back to the room, so I grabbed the blood and put it all over me.
House Democrats rallied at a memorial for gun violence victims earlier this week before narrowly passing a package of gun control measures.
In 2019, the United States suffered 17 times more gun deaths than the next highest G7 country. We stand alone in mass shootings. Other countries pass sensible gun safety laws and protect their children. And no other country comes close to the number of school shootings we have.
But supporters of the constitutional right to bear arms argue that the commonly proposed gun control laws, such as limits on gun magazines, would not make a difference.
Magazines are commonly possessed by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes. The few rigorous studies on their prohibition have found that the evidence for their success at lowering rates of gun violence is inconclusive at best. The context in which mass public shootings occur renders magazine limits effectively useless at saving lives.
Gun control is one of the impassioned debates in American life. Polls show the majority of Americans support most of these measures, but Republican lawmakers argue that boosting school security and gun safety education will save more lives.
There's an important place for law-abiding gun owners to serve in protecting themselves, their families, and their communities from violence. Our Second Amendment is an important tool in securing our individual rights to self-defense.
With narrow control of the U.S. Senate, Democrats will have to reach a deal with Republicans, who strongly support the National Rifle Association and other gun rights groups, to pass those changes into law.
It's an overwhelming consensus in this caucus among the broad panoply of gun groups, gun safety groups, and among the American people. Get something done, get something real done, even if it's not everything that many of us would wish for.
That possible deal in the Senate could include raising from 18 to 21 the minimum age to own an AR-15 style assault rifle, the same weapon that was used by the 18-year-old gunman in Uvalde, Texas. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
World-renowned architect Diabedo Francis Kere returned to his hometown in Burkina Faso for the first time since winning the Pritzker Architecture Prize, his profession's most prestigious award. Here again is Clara Frank.
This was the welcome received by Diabedo Francis Kere in Burkina Faso at the weekend. If you don't know who that is, well, he's not a trophy-winning athlete or beloved movie star. He's an architect. And what's more, he's the first African and Black winner of the Pritzker Architecture Prize, the profession's most prestigious award.
I have a feeling of great gratitude and satisfaction as well. From seeing that all the efforts that we have produced together, the work that we did together is recognized, and that the people are proud of it and realize that we did a good job.
Kere returned to his hometown on Saturday. Gondo had no school when he was growing up there. The son of a village chief, he left at a young age to attend a school in a nearby town, the first in his community to receive an education. Back where it all began on Saturday, he visited 2 schools that he designed. They use generous shade and thick walls to combat the region's crippling heat.
I build massive walls. A lot speak of thermal mass. But what happens is I build a ceiling on top and I create openings. Then I build a large roof like a treetop, and that roof protects the building against the weather. Mostly rainwater that could destroy the fragile soil walls. It also protects the walls against heat.
As the first African to win the prize, he says he feels a responsibility that makes him think of the future. The challenges he sees include the climate and violent conflicts over remaining resources.
The challenges also come from the growing population, cities that are growing, how to find solutions to create infrastructures.
Kere splits his time between Burkina Faso and Germany, where he studied and established his practice. He has designed schools, health facilities, and public spaces across Africa, Europe, and the United States. Clara Frank, VOA News.
In a 500-year-old stone theater in the Egyptian capital, 2 young dervishes spin ceaselessly. Slowly, then all at once, they are consumed in a flurry of vivid fabrics. Born into a lineage of whirling dervishes, Mohamed Olad, 20, takes great pride in the uniquely Egyptian interpretation of the centuries-old ritual known as tanura or skirt in Arabic. The kaleidoscope performance is a world away from the UNESCO-listed whirling dervishes of Turkey, who trace their origins to the teachings of Sufi poet and mystic Jalal al-Din Rumi. Distinguished by their white robes, camel wool hats, and filtered to ascetic Sufi spiritualism, the ceremonies in Turkey bear only a fleeting resemblance to the psychedelic performances popular in Egypt. And that's our show for today. We invite you to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.